Yes, welcome back. And now we're looking at Lagos. Lagos State. Lagos is working is a phrase that a lot of people would normally remember. They can't forget that statement. But we want to see how far Lagos has come in terms of the traffic situation. There is expected to be improvement, and the governor of Lagos State has consistently said that during his term, especially this second term in office, that he will put in place the necessary structure, policies and decisions that would help make Lagos get prepared for being a mega city if it is not a mega city by the time he's leaving office. So that brings us to the issue of transportation and the issue of the new law that the government has put in place now. We look at the traffic situation around the town. We look at issues of pedestrian crossing. We look at the issue of NURTW that are described as Agbero by some people. And all of these issues are being put together into one solid law that tackles all of the problems and make it clear what the policy of the government is and what the regulation should be. But to discuss this with us this morning, we have the Lagos State Attorney General, and that is Mr. Ade Ipaye. Welcome for coming on the show this morning. And to also look at it from the transport sector, from the transport part of the government, the Lagos State Commissioner for Transport, Mr. Kayode Okwefa. Great to have you here.
Good morning.
So we will start first by going to the person who probably would have played a major role in putting the legislation together, Mr. Ade Ipaye. What are the key elements of this legislation before we begin to unbundle it? What are the key elements of this legislation that people should note? Because there's been a lot of misunderstanding. There will be loads of fines that says if you cross the road or if you drive past pedestrian crossing, this is what will happen, and that it's extremely punitive. Maybe if you give us a quick 1-2 minutes of dissecting the key elements and the punitive measures.
Okay. It's unfortunate that focus had been on the penalties rather than the rules themselves and the purpose behind those rules. I think to start with, we should understand that this is about safety. This is about security. This is about getting a new road culture which will be conducive to our lives, our livelihood, our work, because no one can deny the fact that as it is now, we spend too much time on the road. We get too much of anger and annoyance just by going through traffic to where we work, and that we are unsafe when we are out there on the road. This has caused government to review the rules that guide the way we operate as drivers, as commuters. And I want to say that a lot of the incentive for amendment of the laws came from the general public, from representatives of the people in the House of Assembly, from commissions of inquiry that the state had cause to set up based on complaints made by the populace. Now, what does this law actually say? It says a lot of things that had always been there since 1949. I mean, we had the first road traffic law in Nigeria in that year. There had been 6 amendments since then. This would have been the 7th one, but because we thought patching up by way of amendments may make the law untidy, we now revoked it altogether and brought in a new one. But instead of the generalized offenses that you would have found in the old law, like dangerous driving, driving under the influence of alcohol, constituting a nuisance to other road users, these are still there. But we've gone further this time to make specific rules to specify things that you should do or should not do while they're on the road. And this time, and this is probably the most far-reaching change that we have, this time there are a lot of rules concerning commercial motorcyclists. Why? Because all the while it hadn't just been the way we conducted our public transportation, but now we have commercial motorcycles. This law restricts them to certain areas of the state. In fact, the approach taken in the law is to list the streets and roads and bridges on which commercial motorcycles will not be allowed. Now, where they are allowed, it states rules like they cannot carry more than one passenger at a time, they cannot carry pregnant women, they cannot carry children, and they must wear protective crash helmet. They cannot go on all the highways listed in the schedule, but in summary, all the expressways, all the bridges. Okay, so then the problem of trailers in Lagos, it's stated, it has always been the rule, either a schedule to the law, that we restrict the movement. But this time it is in the main legislation that we will not have trailers in Lagos between the hours of 6 a.m. in the morning and 9 a.m. in the evening.
9 p.m.
9 p.m. In the evening. And the reason being obvious is that most traffic jams that you experience in Lagos, when you get to the end of it, you find a broken down trailer. And we have an inordinate quantity of trailers in Lagos because all of them taking things
Ports.
out of Lagos from the ports. You know, they have to pass through the Lagos road. So we'd rather they operated at night. So that is also there. Then the habits that we have seen over time, driving against traffic, I think is the worst of them all. I mean, a little congestion on the right side of the road and people jump to the other side, face the oncoming traffic, and this complicates the entire situation and worsens the traffic jam. So this law makes very strict rules about that. It stipulates penalties, and much has been said about penalties, but what it says, let me clarify, is that for the first offender, you could be jailed for up to a year. Subsequent offenders up to 3 years. But the same law in section 36 goes on to give other sentencing options. Even where those jail terms apply, it gives the judicial officer the discretion to ask the offender to do community service rather than go to jail. So it is not inevitable that the offender must end up in jail. He could be asked to do community service. That is working in public for a specified period of time.
Definitely would assuage some nerves, because a lot of people thought you will end up in prison for that kind of offense.
Okay, now Mr. Kwefa, I have heard comments in the newspapers, on television, on radio about this law, and my judgment may be wrong, but what I deduced from the comments that I have heard is that this law is welcome by a lot of people in Lagos, but their major fear is implementation. Some of these laws had been there a long time ago. You yourself have been on this program when the laws were made about Okada riders and how they were not allowed on major roads and all that, and you still see them on Third Mainland Bridge, you see them on Ikorodu Road, and all they have to do is just give somebody maybe 15 naira and they're allowed to ply the roads. These laws are now being reinforced. How do you plan to actually enforce them? That is the question on the lips of most Lagosians who think that this law is actually overdue.
Thank you very much, and I believe that is another intent of the redrafting and then revocation of the previous law, is to make the law much more possible to implement. But basically, in the implementation of any law, it is not just on the government side.